So, good afternoon. This year we celebrate 50 years from the publication of a very significant book that has determined the ecological way of thinking. This is Ernst Schumacher's book, What is Small is Beautiful. And even as an expression, I think that is quite well known. So I'll speak about this small and beautiful that we live in the end. Now, some of the characteristics of the small and beautiful domestic systems, residential systems, are unique. Let me become more clear. A very brief history. When we talk about residential systems, we are talking about systems up to 10 kilowatts grossly. This is how this category is defined. And as you know, the first residential systems, household systems, were first installed in 2009 in Greece, through a program that was quite generous vis-à-vis the tariffs, because such systems were exclusively used for the sale of the energy. This was practically completed in 2013, and we had the installation of 375 megawatts. In 2014, there was an essential change in the philosophy of small systems. So we went from the reasoning for producing, generating, and selling to the concept of producing and consuming, net metering, as we know it. Net metering for a host of reasons took its time to show its capacity and its potential. And even as we speak, when we refer to net metering at the level of installed capacity, in fact, we're talking about commercial systems, since the residential sector accounts only for a very small percentage of this whole figure. The overall installed capacity net metering is a bit higher than 300 megawatts. However, the residential sector vis-à-vis self-consumption remains poor relative. In the two diagrams, we see the contribution of the system, 7.2% in the overall installed systems until 2022. 2.2 consists of the old systems. Whereas on the right diagram, we see the overall installed capacity for 2022, which has been a record year, 1.4 giga connected. Out of this 1.4 giga, only 1% corresponded to household residential systems. This situation is not healthy in a market that has the luxury to address itself to a very broad range of consumers and investors. Things need to change, and fortunately we see that there is a change coming. Let me show you what 7.2 means on a European level. You can see the percentages of small residential, not rooftop systems, in several European countries. In Poland or Belgium, 2/3 of overall systems are small rooftop systems, in contrast to other countries such as Spain and Italy, etc., where we have wind parks and soil. And we are far away from the European average. So, in other words, something had to be done in order to move on to a more balanced mixture. In other words, we needed to correct this situation, and this was the purpose of the Association of PV companies. We put pressure on government, which led to changes in 2022, the most important of which was to make sure that there is space reserved for smaller systems. Yesterday and today, the biggest part of discussion was about the inadequacy of the grid. We solved this issue by virtue of a law. We have reserved approximately 2 gigawatts for some systems, 40% households, 30% businesses, 30% farmers. Percentages that might change in the future depending on the demand and the needs. So having secured the electric space, some sort of aid had to be given to consumers in the sense that net metering itself does not need subsidies. But the ministry decided, and correctly so, to accompany this program with the installation of storage systems accompanying PVs. And the ministry did this for 3 reasons. The first one being that storage increases the percentage of same-time consumption. Secondly, we help the networks. And thirdly, we have the creation of a new market, the residential storage market, that means the creation of many jobs. So the main characteristic of residential household systems is that this is the only sector where we are able to speak about energy democracy in its core, because this is addressed to everyone, to low-income households, high-income households, so everyone may participate and receive subsidies through the PVs on the roof program. It's taking its baby steps, but it seems that the ministry understands what the problems are, and we expect to see some adjustments and improvements soon. The simplest of things would be to have to pay those who have connected the systems. So we'll start seeing payments on time. A special part that does not pertain to the program but pertains to the institutional level, where Greece seems to be a pioneer, was an initiative by our own association that has been adopted by the ministry. We are the second country in the world with something similar. We're talking about the shared consumption. That is for owners in a block of flats, etc. They are able to have an agreement to share this energy, this power, something that is going to solve a lot of problems. We are waiting to see the ministerial decision on that. And we'd like to see what the potential is for rooftop PVs and buildings. We have separated the buildings. We have gotten rid of problematic buildings, etc. We all know that Greek blocks of flats have competitive uses such as solar panels, etc. So it seems that we could have 24 gigawatts of PVs, almost double the national objective. Particularly the residential area can take half of this. So it's not space that's missing. There are other things that we need to correct. Now, if we see where we currently stand with the household PV or rooftop PV, we have many applications. The average size for PVs is approximately 7.2 kilowatts, and the average storage capacity is approximately 8 kilowatt hours, close to figures we see in mature markets such as the German one. Now let's see about the future. Another piece of good news, the new NECP provides for the first time that there's going to be a national target for small energy self-consumption systems. The target set at 1,000 megawatts, or the number of systems, well, this will depend. But so we see a scenario of growth for this particular market in order for us to achieve this goal by 2030. But since, as I've already showed you, we are far beyond far behind the EU average, we have developed an optimistic scenario that will allow us to approach this target. And I'm using the term of energy democracy scenario. So by 2030, if there is the political will to do that, to do so, because there are no obstacles to it, if there is the political will, this will be achieved. So what would that mean if we achieved such a scenario? What would that mean for our own market vis-à-vis the turnover? In the first scenario, according to the NECP, the turnover for our businesses would stabilize somewhere at around 350 million annually. Pas mal, as the French would put it. In the other scenario, we would go beyond that. We would exceed 1 billion euros. This was the entire PV market's turnover last year, and since PVs have a higher cost per unit, obviously these figures are well justified. Something similar for these two scenarios. Full-time jobs regarding residential household PVs in the NECP scenario, the jobs that such a program would create would account for 8,500, half of which would be direct jobs directly linked to the development, installation, and maintenance, and the other ones would be indirect. And the other scenario for the energy democracy, such jobs would be more than 28,000. In other words, since we keep on hearing about contribution to growth and employment, etc., the household, the residential sector has a possibility with its 2 gigawatts to create many jobs. This is something feasible. The thing is, where are we going to find all these people? Because the first problem that the PV roof had encountered was the lack of installers. So our association also undertakes initiatives to train installers, because if we are to implement this project, we need the proper people. And since there has been talk about domestic added value, I would like to conclude with this slide. What is the domestic added value for residential PVs? Nothing, one would claim, since we import everything. The panels are made in China. Well, everything's made in China, etc. No, this is wrong. When we talk about the domestic added value, we should not only consider the cost of the equipment, but rather also the cost of installation and maintenance, and in particular in the household systems, as a percentage, the equipment cost is quite low. So the domestic added value of such systems is quite high. And since the equipment cost is dropping, the contribution of the equipment to the added value will keep on shrinking. So here I give you two examples. A simple system, net metering without storage. The domestic added value is 70% today, whereas if we add storage to that, this will drop to 55%. In other words, this is why I talked about the particularities of the residential systems. We have high domestic value, creation of jobs, and definitely an expansion, a broadening of energy democracy that everyone wants to embrace. I don't know if anyone is against it, although we've heard some things by people who have aspired to do everything on their own. But anyway, household or residential such systems are now trolling on the runway, and there is a huge potential, and I hope that soon, maybe sooner than 2030, we'll be able to admire the view. So wait for it, it's going to come.